Welcome back to the third part of our interview with James Burnie of gunnercooke. Cool. Now moving on to another product in your universe, NFTs. Please explain precisely what these are to an idiot like me, because an idiot like me looks at them and sees nothing of value. So if you have one, tell me what you have, what do you actually own, what don't you own, and what are the complexities, the legal complexities involved in ownership?
Sure. So the way to see this is people get excited about crypto assets. A crypto asset in my mind is just a blank side of A4. And what a crypto asset is and its value is derived from what you put on that side of A4 and how accurate what you write is. So if you go, this crypto asset equals 1 gram of gold, and that gram of gold is in a vault over there and you can redeem it, the value of the crypto asset is gold. Maybe a slight difference, you don't have to store it or something like that. Those are the arguments you go down to. With stablecoins, you've written on your blank side of A4, this crypto asset equals £1. The pound is in a bank account, you can get it. That's the true value. Again, sometimes you get a slight premium because you don't need bank accounts and the like, but broadly speaking, 1-to-1. NFTs basically take that idea, and what they do is they make every single piece of paper unique. So it is the same basic fundamental idea, which is whatever you write on that piece of paper is what the NFT gives you. So if what you write on it is value, the NFT has value. What you then get is people misunderstood what crypto people were writing on the thing. So if I go, here is Picasso NFT, and there's only 1,000 of them, and I draw a pretty picture, and I copy and paste a Picasso picture, you don't own the Picasso. What you've got is you've got a spreadsheet with, here is, a picture we have copied and pasted onto the side of A4, and basically you've just bought a side of A4, Picasso scribbled on the front. With the board monkeys, effectively what you got was you got a picture of a monkey. But in addition to that, you got rights to membership of a club. So if you were thinking about it rationally, you'd go, oh, I get to go into the following clubs. It's a club membership. The value is linked to the club membership. You then got sort of Madonna and Justin Bieber turning up and spending lots of money. Oh, now these are the clubs with Justin Bieber and Madonna. Suddenly the value goes up. And then you get this sort of issue all the time in crypto, which is you get momentum in the room. So people get hyped and hyped and hyped, and it goes up to ridiculous value because it doesn't in any way reflect the true value of the underlying. And then people realize the fact is completely overvalued and the whole thing crashes.
So are there any actual practical use cases for NFTs? I can see Bitcoin, you can spend it, stable coins you've explained, but I'm struggling to see what the actual point of NFTs is.
It's often arty things. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is characters in video games, proof of artwork. So if you buy, let's say you buy an actual piece of art, is it really done by the artist or not? What if there's an NFT attached to the piece of art, proving that the artist really did do it? So you take Banksy, for example. You don't know whether Banksy is real or not unless Banksy says it's real or not. Mm-hmm. But if Banksy had NFTs, you basically, what you could do is you could acquire the NFT linked to that particular piece of artwork, and you know it's the real artwork because the NFT is giving you that proof, and you know that only Banksy put out that NFT. So it tends to be used mainly currently in the arts world. Your problem at the moment is a lot of the arts world just don't like crypto on site, so effectively it's kind of underloved. And the other thing I find quite entertaining is NFTs are probably the last bastion of the relatively unregulated crypto world, because people take the view, well, this is basically a bit like artwork. You don't regulate artwork as a security, so NFTs, let's keep it out. So to me, it's kind of underused, but it will find its home, I think, with kind of like art-based concepts or some variety. And to give you kind of one of the more wildcard ideas, is things like, attach your particular sound, because there's been a change last year where basically sound for the first time can become considered intellectual property because you've created a new sound. Well, that could be linked to an NFT, and it could be like, and then also lastly, things like let's take football clubs, for example. You like Ronaldo. Ronaldo does a limited run of 1,000 NFTs, each of Ronaldo scoring a different goal in a different game. If you own the NFT, you get a Zoom call with Ronaldo for 30 minutes. The fans want it because they want Ronaldo, and it's like sports memorabilia, but better, if you see what I mean. So it's giving that kind of rarity value. So it definitely has a place, but at the moment, generally NFTs are just not doing well because the problem is the hype is sort of, a lot of this is effectively what the fund manager thinks. The fund manager think will do well, they put money into it, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fund manager convinces themselves there's no money in NFTs, so NFTs are currently dead. The fund manager convinces themselves that DeFi's got money in it, loads of money in DeFi. The question is when the law catches up on some of this, whether they're going to suddenly decide, no, there's no money in DeFi, at which point that will then die, and then something else will be the latest idea for the fund manager to put the money into.
Cool. That is absolutely fascinating. It's sort of blowing my mind, but I do now have a handle on it. I'm not going to buy any though. Even if I wanted to, I don't think my wife would let me.
Still need to know.
Oh dear, you don't know my wife. I'm very well aware that time is marching on, but I'm afraid I do have to touch on Mika. Now it's up and running, is it making life easier, more difficult, or no difference at all to actually selling into the EU?
Mika's been breaking hearts a little bit. So just taking a step back, what Mika is basically copy and paste securities legislation, muck about the wording a bit and yank it in. That's basically what the Europeans have done. The issue you have is you've got what the crypto world means by a crypto hub, and you've got what we call the onshore jurisdictions, i.e. EU, UK, US, what they mean by an onshore hub. The crypto community thinks becoming a crypto hub means no tax ever again, do whatever you like, new idea in minutes, click a button and you're a multimillionaire. The regulators think, no, they're more hit it with a stick and make it behave better and force it into the jurisdictions. What MiCA does is it forces you to set up local presence in the EU. It tries to stop cross-border selling from somewhere like the BVI. So it's very much a stick rather than carrot approach towards regulation, because they're basically taking the view, we've got a large population, you would like to sell to our population. If you want to sell to it, play by our rules. The other thing, which, just being blunt, is the EU population is not that keen to buy crypto generally. Yes, there are people in the EU who do it, but crypto is not a popular investment. In the UK, people love buying crypto. We're obsessed with the stuff. Americans love buying crypto. Europeans less so. They're more about lifestyle. So what you get into, and this is the thing, is with things like the fronting in Germany, it's a cheap, easy access into the EU. Yeah, but you're not going to be a huge business off the back of it, and that's your problem. So it is sort of stage one in my mind.
Do you think they're missing a trick from a commercial point of view?
I think if the population don't want to buy it, the population don't want to buy it, if you see what I mean. And that's the blunt, honest answer. And the problem is you need, you've got to get 27 member states to agree it's a good idea. All the member states are taking slightly different views on to all the different bits mean. They've got it's the problem the UK had originally. They've gone first. Never want to go first. You want to be the last guy in the room as far as I'm concerned. But they've gone first, which basically means that other countries like the UK will look at MiCA and we'll try and do a better job. When we've drafted rules for other countries, you look at MiCA and you do a better job. And someone's jumped, so you can see where they've gone splat and go, fix those bits for a start, if you see what I mean. So it's kind of a problem. And then the other issue they've got is because there's 27 member states, when they muck something up, they can't just go and fix. I mean, the beauty of the UK at the moment and the beauty of the FCA at the moment is because we're not in Europe, you can go fix. So if you muck it all up, you go, we've changed our minds actually, resets. Let's just change all that and make it work again. And you have had that happen in the UK around things like stablecoins, where certain ideas have been put forward. The entire world's gone, who came up with that idea? And they're not us actually doing it. No. And that you can't do in the EU. So I think they've got a bit of a problem currently, and all the money is coming out the system in the EU and it's moving to other jurisdictions. So there's, in my view, they've become the starter pack, but they've got real issues currently in the EU, and what they need to do is they need to be a lot more agile. I don't know if they can be a lot more agile given the way in which they're structured. They need uniformity across the EU.
Yeah. Now we've talked a lot about the EU, the UK, the US, a bit about British overseas territories. Now we could have named those same territories if we were talking about traditional finance. But one thing that I find fascinating about the blockchain and crypto universe is it's a sort of year zero, and countries in the developing world are kind of starting on an equal footing with everybody else, which obviously they're never going to be able to compete with the financial centres of London, New York and Frankfurt in traditional finance, but this is a different era and a different world. What territories should we be looking out for flexing their crypto muscles?
So it kind of depends where you're at as a business. So two common jurisdictions to start the ball rolling on are Hong Kong and Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
They are interesting because the crypto world has convinced itself there's no real rules in these jurisdictions. There are rules in these jurisdictions. In fact, in Dubai, I think it was 18 people have been locked up in Dubai for breaking the rules, and the crypto community, and it's the only which does this, has just blinked and ignored it and just kept going anyway. So I feel quite sorry for the guys over there because they've got lots of rules, just don't pay any attention to them because they kind of convince themselves they can't possibly have rules. They don't mean it. And so you get those two are common places to start. We're seeing other jurisdictions turn up. So things that people don't think about, which or think about, Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has got a lot of the Bitcoin mining in China moved across to Kazakhstan. It basically is a huge, huge country, and they're beginning to want to become the Dubai for that region. Because if you look at Dubai, Dubai is next to places like Iran and the like, which are tricky to do business in. So it becomes a way of working in the jurisdiction without crossing into countries where you think, oh, the compliance is going to get more and more complicated. If you take Kazakhstan, it's near countries like Russia, which again, hard to do business in, but traditionally the Kazakhstanis have not particularly given the Russians a lenient time, so it's a way of getting outposts in the jurisdiction effectively without so much of the headache. The other players in the room working through are Africa and Asia, and it's slightly different in both. So in Africa, there are basically 4 regulators, countries in Africa which have really gone for regulating crypto assets effectively. Africa is a little all over the shop when you look at it as a continent. If the African, again, this is a Westerner speaking, so it's probably just Delali, but they really want to make it work. They should really club together as a group and try and get to work that way. But interesting, there's a lot of potential in Africa, particularly around things like payments and movement of funds, all the rest of it. And we've seen quite a lot, particularly on the payment side, looking quite closely at Africa because cheap, quick, and fast payments is becoming quite the thing in vogue in that jurisdiction, effectively. And you also get Africans, say in the UK, sending money back home. That's becoming more and more of an industry. Asia is the interesting one because, bluntly, Westerners seem to think Asia is one place, and it just isn't in the slightest. Every Asian country is different. The politics is totally different. If you take Singapore, people from Singapore say Singapore's a safe, it's an easy place to do business. Kind of isn't. What you've got is under Singapore, you've got Malaysia. Malaysia's got about 4 currencies with about 4 companies and gone, that's all, folks, you don't need any more. So yeah, compared to Malaysia, it's easy. But compared to other countries, actually it's really quite a highly regulated, tough jurisdiction. So we've had lots of people go there, discovered the robots are a lot more complicated than they thought, and now having to leave there again. Because Singapore, the mass in Singapore and the FCA see the world a lot in common. So it's not that much easier really than the UK. It's just you've got other countries where it's harder. Japan is another one, notoriously difficult to get into Japan. So you then get, because you get shifting towards core zones. And that tends to be, Hong Kong and Singapore tend to be the big two. But you get a lot of sort of shifting as things aren't quite what you see. And you get a sort of short list. So that's always more complicated than you think it's going to be. And then Latin America is another one where if you want to do Latin America, you really want kind of local guys on the ground who know the local politics, know the way forwards, because it's quite a political place to work in. And again, not necessarily regulatory light, and it is helpful to have the right people on the team before you walk into the room. So it's not one to be underestimated. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at globally.
Yeah, well, you say that, but you haven't said much about China. What's going on? What's going on with them?
Crypto is banned in China. Short.
Well, there we are then.
So what you've got at the moment is, because crypto is banned in China, serious Chinese crypto players no longer really are in China. They tend to be in either Hong Kong or Singapore. One of the reasons Hong Kong is a hub is basically crypto is no longer really in China, effectively. Selling crypto assets into China is a criminal offense. It's quite murky if you're not in there to know exactly what you can and cannot do to some extent, because there's things like tolerances and the like which get brought in.
Yeah.
But the push in the last few months has been to get rid of all of those. So the short answer is this: basically, as far as I'm concerned, it's a no-go zone, effectively.
Right. Well, this has been fascinating. Before I let you go, were we to be having this conversation in 5 years' time, what do you think the difference will be?
Crypto is a bit like the iPad. The iPad gets created, everyone queues outside the store. Over time, the iPad becomes boring. People stop queuing outside the store for it. What you've got at the moment is you've got a couple of ideas knocking around, which people are very excited by. So let's take something like stablecoins, for example. There is actually, in my mind, a limit to the number of copies of one currency any human being needs. So the question then becomes, is what do all those people go for? You then got real world assets. And again, okay, I'd like to have a wine. I make a tokenized version. I get my token. I quite like drinking the wine, actually. Bit of a blow. What you'll then get, and this is where we think it's going next, is so that those sorts of innovations will become, in inverted commas, boring, i.e. traditional solid, you can copy and paste someone else's concept, it just goes, you know what I mean? And then you're going to get, in my mind, new concepts coming in. So things like Winecoin, which is when you're a merchant, rather than have stable coins, what you do is you have a coin linked to a value of wine. So you need 20 barrels of wine for the Christmas because you're a pub and that's what you sell. But you're not going to hold that money in fiat. You're not going to store the wine because that costs money. You have Winecoin, and for 100 Winecoin, you've got enough wine for Christmas, and you've taken out the FX risk. So I think that thing's going to happen. I think AI is bobbling around, and I think quantum computing is bobbling around. And quantum computing is basically stick things on steroids, is probably the best way to see it. AI is about randomizing things, but in a way which looks less and less random as a solution. And the next thing is going to be crypto, AI, quantum, these things as they walk into each other. So AI, in my mind, intrinsically insolvent, because it's about taking an idea, making it as multiple as possible, spreading it around, and making it very cheap. All this says how cheap it is. It's basically a terrible but cheap job. That's what they're selling people. Crypto is all about scarcity. So it's all about, I'm the only guy with this beautiful Bitcoin. No one else has got this Bitcoin. Aren't I special? Isn't it worth a fortune? And it's like yin and yang. So they're going to play into each other hard. And then quantum computing is going to then put it on steroids because it's going to be, well, yeah, you can do this, you can do this. And then we can basically go at warp speed and what happens next. And to me, in 5 years, it's going to be watching these new technologies thump into each other effectively with good and bad outcomes across the board.
That's interesting and an appropriate time to leave it. James Burnie, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, James.